Hi guys, my name is Trinity, and if you're here, you must be here to talk about books because that is why I am here, to talk about books. And in today's video, I will be doing my weekly wrap-up. However, I do have about a week and a half of things to share with you guys because I got real busy. If you guys don't know, one, airplanes are constantly flying around my house, and that's a noise that I can't control. But school is now out. I'm a stay-at-home mom. So I have my son home with me now, and that means recording is a little bit difficult, but we will also having some things planned and all of that because he's home now. And yeah, so while I got a lot of reading done, I didn't have a whole lot of recording time. So we are doing kind of a week and a half wrap up as opposed to a week. So that means I read 5 books. 3 of them were audio, 3 of them were physical. 2 of them were actually for the Olympic readathon that I am participating in, and the other 4 were not. Most of them were adult fantasy. I think I have 1 young adult fantasy on this list. But let's go ahead and get into it. So the first book that I read would be Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. Yes, I finally finished this book. And let me tell you, I was not the biggest fan of this book. So one thing that I really like about The Faithful and the Fallen is John Gwynne is great at writing action. He's really great at driving the plot forward. And he's very good at not using description, overusing it, I guess is the best way to say it. And on that thought, I'm going to insert an image right here. I have talked about deliberate description in the past, and this is a little blurb from my favorite author, Anthony Ryan, talking about what deliberate description actually means and why it is important to some readers while others might enjoy the flowery writing or the overuse of description. But I am one of those people who does not like it. And I don't like description unless it drives the plot forward. This means I don't want to sit and read about people's clothing or the descriptions of a place unless we intend to explore said place. Or, I don't need a whole lot of describing something that really won't matter in the end. So that is the big reason I thoroughly enjoy Anthony Ryan, because when he is describing something, that is because he is going to use it later in the story. So I really, really enjoy that. Okay, so back to The Shadow of the Gods. I am a fan of John Gwynne. I do own all of the books that he has currently published. And this book, to me, was an answer to all of John Gwynne's criticisms, which I don't feel are always valid. Or I don't think he needed to listen to all of the criticism that had been said about his books. So one of the criticisms is that John Gwynne does not distinguish his characters well. So he overdoes it in The Shadow of the Gods. And I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I do like getting character distinctions, don't get me wrong. I really want to be able to separate my characters. I like that the characters speak differently in the books, or in most books, and I do like for there to be distinguishing factors. However, we spent so much time getting to know these characters that I got thoroughly bored. And we've talked again in the past about me not being a character-driven reader and being a plot-driven reader. Well, this book had very little plot. So while The Faithful and the Fallen hangs on a plot built around a prophecy, it's not a strong plot, but it's enough that I feel the need to continue. In The Shadow of the Gods, you couldn't convince me to continue, as you guys probably have come to realize from the massive amount of times I've mentioned it in what I'm currently reading. So there was nothing driving this story for me. And that's just the criticisms that John Gwynne has had in the past. Oh, the other criticism that he tried to correct, which I thought didn't need correction and was overdone in this book, was the use of Viking terms. If you don't know, The Faithful and the Fallen is set in a very Viking-esque type world. Yet he didn't use the Viking words used to describe things or used to talk about certain things. So he thoroughly overdid it in The Shadow of the Gods with words that nobody, unless you are from Danish background or read a lot of Norse books, which I actually do, still completely overdone. And I hated that. And if I never hear the words thought cage put together in a sentence ever again, I will be more than happy. It won't break my heart at all. So, needless to say, I was not a huge fan of this book, and I probably will not continue with the Bloodsworn. This book annoyed the crap out of me. Now, however, you guys have probably heard from everybody who has reviewed this book that it is 5 stars across the board. It is orgasmic in its telling, and just I totally stole that from somebody, just so you know. And I just, no, it's not. It's not good. Let me get off that train, because John Gwynne's writing did improve significantly in this book in every other aspect than what I currently have mentioned. I did give the book a 3.5, so there were some redeeming factors in it. It was just thoroughly flawed in my opinion. And that is one girl's personal opinion on The Shadow of the Gods. And I'm not alone. I have realized this. I am not alone in thinking that 3.5 is a valid rating. However, it's not the popular opinion. Okay, and for the second book that I read, Realm Breaker by Victoria Aveyard. I was reading this as a buddy read with Jordan and another of our friends on Discord, and I ended up blowing through it because it was so good. I was thoroughly impressed. I have read Red Queen, so I did know that Victoria Aveyard was a good writer, and I just was not anticipating how much she has grown as a writer, because this was so good. The plot was good. I really enjoyed the magic system introduced in this book, and I really liked the relationships and how everything was just kind of not what it seemed on the surface. Like, you get to know these characters early on. You get to meet, it's a fairly decent sized cast. It's not huge. It's not John Gwynne. But you get to know these characters and then come to realize what you think you know is not necessarily true. Like, don't take anything at face value at first. That's just my warning for this book. But the characters were so nuanced. Every character had their own personality, and I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. The one character, though, that I was a little bummed by, oh, I can't even think of his name. He is the immortal character in this book. Oh, I want to say Dom. I might be off. I have a really hard time remembering characters' names, just so you guys know. Well, he is this person with all of the magics and with all of the interesting backstory, and the story's not about him, so she doesn't focus on him very much. And I really, really wanted to get to know him because he had the most interesting backstory, and so was a little bummed on that front. So I did give this 4 stars because there were a couple of elements I wish she would have explored that didn't get explored. And there was one character in particular that I thought was neglected. And I'm like, no, that's the one I want to know more about. So I thought it was a missed opportunity to have a very interesting story in that aspect. The story itself is interesting. It's just I wanted his story too. So that was, it was a fun ride, and it was a very good book, and I highly recommend it. Now, I know there's a lot of criticisms for Red Queen and how the series ended and everything like that. So if that affects how you view her works going forward, I don't know what to tell you on that aspect other than her writing has improved dynamically. So give it a try. Okay, so the third book that I listened to would be Spells Trouble by PC and Kristen Cast. Now, I did get this from Macmillan Audio. I am on an auto approval list for Macmillan Audio. This has to probably do with the fact that I've been on NetGalley for a really long time, and they know that I will pick up an audiobook before an ebook. So I got the audio for Spells Trouble, and I have to say, I have been a fan of PC Cast for quite some time. She's native to my hometown. I have met her. I have talked to her and her daughter quite often. I used to work at Borders, and she used to come in there all the time. If you guys have read the House of Night novels, she talks about Borders, and that is the store that I worked in. So she really did frequent that Borders and that area of town. I can vouch for that. And so I have always picked up PC Cast books just because she's local. So let's get into what I liked about this particular book. I am a huge fan of witchcraft stories that center around Wicca, like the actual practice and religion of witchcraft. I really, really enjoy it. I think that they are usually very beautifully done. And I used to read Kate Tiernan all the time, which you guys probably saw that I did unhaul those books. However, this was the grown-up version of it for me, so I was very happy about that. And we have 2 sisters who kind of clash. They're twins, but they do have that twin bond going on. And one of the sisters in this story has a chosen god, not goddess, which is very unheard of in Wicca. They usually choose a goddess because it is a very feminine centered religion. And this becomes a point of controversy for the 2 girls, and it is very, very intriguing. Now, one thing I do want to point out, and this is a thing that you should know should you pick up any PC Cast, Kristen Cast book, there is always sex. There is always explicit sex in their books. And so if you are wanting to pick this up for a young adult reader, because it is labeled young adult, know that there is an explicit sex scene in this book. And if you are a person who doesn't like to read explicit sex scenes, probably avoid PC and Kristen Cast because they do this all the time. And I thought it was really well written. I have no problem with erotica, romance, things like that. And that should be evident in the fact that PC Cast wrote one of my favorite books. So, and it's a romance. But I do want to point that out in case you have younger readers who are wanting to pick this up. There is a very explicit sex scene. However, I thought it was so good. Again, another 4-star book. I do think that probably is centered in my nostalgia for like Kate Tiernan and Red is for Remembrance, books along those lines. But it was really good. Okay, the next book that I read would be Age of Assassins by R.J. Barker. I loved this book so much. Again, another 4-star book. This was what I wanted The Assassin's Apprentice to be. And if you guys don't know, I have read Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, and I didn't like it. I really didn't like it. I am going to give it another try because I do think that I might eventually like the books. And I've grown as a reader since the last time I have read them. So, but this is what I wanted Assassin's Apprentice to be. So this is darker. This is grittier than Assassin's Apprentice. And we are dealing with an assassin versus an assassin. And the storytelling aspect of R.J. Barker versus Robin Hobb, this is the type of story I like to read. Robin Hobb is depressing. And it's not my thing. I do like dark. I don't like depressing. And there's a couple of books that I have on my DNF or, set aside for another day, which the book was depressing instead of dark. And yeah, I really, really liked Girton. I really liked the relationship between master and apprentice in this book. And I don't know, it's really, really hard for me to talk about books that I loved. And why did I give this 4-star instead of a 5? It did lose me in a couple of places. There were moments where we started talking about certain things. I can't even talk about it because it's spoilery. But it lost me in a couple of places because it was an avenue that I was like, why are we going down this road? Do we need to go down this road? Must we? And then we did. But it didn't last for very long. And I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed the rest of it. So 4 stars. Highly recommend it. Can't wait to get the rest of this trilogy. The next one is Blood of Assassins and then King of Assassins. I will be picking them up and reading them soon. Okay. Let's talk about the first book that I read for the readathon. That would be the team read, which garnered me 140 points for my team. The Forgetting Moon by Brian Lee Durfee. Again, loved this book so much. Now, I will say I had read Realmbreaker leading into this, and the two did kind of mesh in my head a little bit at first, because Brian Lee Durfee has some great characterization, and I feel like I'm setting myself up like I did with John Gwynne by reading Brian Lee Durfee. And if you don't know what that means, I will explain just a little bit. Don't fall for any characters. Don't do it. So I won't get into who my favorite characters were because I don't want to spoil anything for you guys, but the characters in this book are phenomenal. The writing is phenomenal. The plot is phenomenal. So you might be asking yourself, why did I give this 4 stars if it was phenomenal? There is an issue that I would like to talk about just a little bit because I don't think it's anything that destroys this book, but it is a problem for some people, and Brittany has talked about this, and I knew this going into the book, and so I want to let you guys know this going into the book. There is fat shaming in this book. There is zero body positivity going on in this book. There is sexism going on in this book. And I do want to point out that the fat shaming is universal. It is not just directed at women. There's a lot of fat shaming for the rich people in this book as well. And the thing that pushes me past that is these are all soldiers who have lived a life where they have not had the best upbringing, but is it excusable in a modern day fantasy to write that into your story? That's for you to decide. I still like Brent Weeks. I really liked this. And guys, I think if the series goes this good for the rest of it, this is going to be right up there with Lightbringer. So if you don't know, Lightbringer is my second favorite series of all time. This is right up there with it. I am going to have to eventually do a top 10 fantasy series of all time. And the reason that I haven't done it yet is because I keep picking up new fantasy and don't know what to put in it because there's so many. But yeah, the 5 Warrior Angels series is definitely going to make it into my favorites list at some point if it keeps going like this, because this was just brilliant. I loved it. Okay, in this next book, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. It is the second book that I picked up for the readathon, garnering my team 60 points. I don't like it. I don't like this series, guys. I don't like it. So I gave this one a 3.5, just like I did the first one. I don't like the Wax and Wayne story. I don't like it. I don't like it. So let's get to some points for this one. The humor is much better in this book. It's much more well written. This book is much more well written than the first one. As we know, the first one was supposed to be a standalone, and then Sanderson continued the series. The first book reads like a standalone. This delves more into what happened at the end of Hero of Ages. So I did enjoy that aspect of it, but we're still dealing with a detective buddy cop story. And it's not my thing. It's not my thing. I'm still going to read the Bands of Mourning because I've committed to it for the Cosmere Conquest. And they're okay. They're okay. This was for the prompt Zeus, featuring a patriarchy, which we all know if you've read Hero of Ages. The Hero of Ages, we still fall under a patriarchy at the end of that, and this is 300 years later, but still under that same banner. I don't even want to talk about it. I don't know what else to say about it other than it's not my thing. It's not my thing. It's not. Okay, and for what I am currently reading, Aries, the prompt for the Olympic readathon. This is what I am putting there for Aries, which is kind kind of funny if you think about it. Sons of Aries. But sci-fi, military-centered sci-fi. That's what I'm reading this for. As you can see, I'm about halfway through. Thoroughly enjoying this one. And then I have a secret book that I can't talk about, but I will reveal at a later date, that I am 31 pages into it, and it's very good, and I love it. You guys will find out about that at the end of the month, but that is my current reading, and I'm trying to stick to one book that I'm reading for the Olympic Readathon and not picking up other things on top of it, because I have a tendency to just go off the rails and not read what I'm supposed to when I do that. So I have one book that I have a commitment to, and then the Olympic Readathon going on. So those are the two books that I am currently reading. Like, subscribe, do all the fun things, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!